Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and the subject of today's video newsletter, well, we're actually going to go back to that title, Complexity Made Simple. Why do I call all of my videos, why is my company called Complexity Made Simple? And that's the subject of today's video. In previous videos, if you've watched any of my YouTube videos, you will know that the centerpiece of my thinking is the idea of a process. It's got inputs and it's got outputs. And it looks like this. It's a money-making process. And when I introduce my clients to this type of thinking, one of the common pushbacks I get, Paul, is, Paul, that's too simple. That's too simple. Our processes are much more complicated than that. We can't use the simple techniques that you recommend. We have to use our skill, I will say. We have to have skilled people, people that have been on the machine for 10 years, 15 years. That's the way we sort all our problems out. We have skilled people because our processes are too complicated, too complex to use this simple. Really, it's a principle, but it's the laws of physics. I would say to most of my clients, hopefully the laws of physics apply inside your company. But they are sort of right in the sense that their process is much more complicated than this. Let's just finish the diagram off. Look, we've got inputs and outputs. They are sort of right. Their processes are much more complicated, but they're beyond the skill that they think they have. And this is why my company, this is why these videos are called Complexity Made Simple, because I want you to understand how complicated your processes are. So let's take a simple situation. Let's assume that your process has 15 inputs. Now we could assume that these are 15 dials. We could have speed, feed, temperature, time, pressure, these types of things. Typical things that you find on processing machinery and injection molding machines and presses and all sorts of things. Typical manufacturing processes, anything that involves physics essentially. So imagine you've got 15 dials. Now for most machines, 15 probably would be a small number because these days we have computer controlled machinery. We can literally go into menu after menu after menu. So just having 15 variables to play around with wouldn't be a lot these days because we've got computer control and we can do much more than that. And imagine that we haven't got the infinite adjustment that we have. Maybe we've got just black knobs and we're just clicking the black knobs, click, 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 click. And so we've only got 8 clicks. In other words, 8 settings for each one of these. Yeah. Now again, this isn't true because obviously computer control these days allows time to be infinitely adjustable, temperature to be infinitely adjustable, pressure to be infinitely adjustable. So this isn't even as complex as your machinery really is. But let's look how complex just this machine gets. Because when your skilled person has a new product, or when your skilled person thinks that they've got problem settings and they need to find better settings, and they come up to this process, how many choices do they have? How many other settings could they choose? Because obviously it's sitting on one of the settings. How many new settings could they choose? Well, think about it. One dial has got 8 choices. If I introduce a second dial, I can go 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3. You get the picture. So in other words, just 2 dials gives me 8 times 8, 64 choices. Then if I go times 8 and I keep going, I end up with 8 to the power 15 choices. 8 to the power 15. Now then, my client is saying my process is too complex. I need to use skill. This is how complex your processes are. Because if you go 8 to the power 15, you end up with 35. Now it could be million. Million would be bad, wouldn't it? Million would be complicated. It's not million. It's not billion. Do the calculation on your calculator. There are 35 trillion choices for your skilled person to try to navigate. Do you think that's possible? Do you think even after 10 years they can even begin to understand what's going on that machine? Now don't get me wrong, do they get the machine away? Do they get the defect rate low enough so that you'll put up with it and you'll run it with a 10%, 15% defect rate, but at least you're getting the customer order out of the door? Of course they can get the machine to run. That's not the point. What we're talking about here, we need them to find the best settings. We want to make money. We want them to find the fastest, cheapest, best quality settings. Are they really going to walk up to a machine and be able to randomly select out of 35 trillion combinations? No, of course they're not. Now, if you don't have a smart way of dealing with this environment, this is the environment your skilled people work in every single day. If you don't have a smart way of dealing with this, you will never make the most amount of money out of your processes. So how do we deal with this? Well, it's very simple. What we do is we bear down on these things and we fix them. So we are going to fix as many as we can. Let's say we fix 10 of them, and therefore we end up with 5 remaining. So in other words, we fix 10 of them. Now how do we fix them? Well, simply what you do is if you come up with their settings, time, temperature, pressure, etc. You literally agree a setting, you dial it in, and you break the dial off the machine, never to be moved again. You stop these variables moving around. So we just have, maybe we have a fixed time, a fixed temperature, and a fixed pressure. We dial it in and we don't move it. We don't move it for 10 of these things. Now what does that leave? Well, that leaves 5 variables. Now these might not be dials. They could be maintenance routines. They could be how often you clean the filters out. They could be manual operation, standard operating procedures. And because they're a little bit more difficult to fix, these are really easy to fix. Maybe because they're people related, they're a little bit more difficult to fix, but we get great standard operating procedures written. We train people really well. And we try to manage this as well as we possibly can. And maybe what we end up with is not 8 ways of doing it. We only end up with 2 different ways of doing each of these 5 remaining variables. And suddenly what have we got? Well, suddenly we've got 2 to the power 5, which is only 32 choices. Now look what we did. I just fixed 10 of these inputs and I smashed this 35 trillion, this complexity, was smashed to pieces with the simplest action. That's why it's called complexity made simple, because now when your skilled person comes to the machine and they're going to make a new choice, they've only got one of 32 choices. Is that a better environment for them to troubleshoot in, to think, to try and come up with faster, better ways of making money? Is that a doable challenge for your skilled people? Absolutely it is. And it was the simplest thing. Complexity made simple. Identify your inputs and fix them. If you want me to do this for your company, you can give me a call, you can get in touch with me via this video, but you could also, if you wanted to, learn all about Six Sigma and Complexity Made Simple by buying my book, drink tea and read the paper. Everything that's in my videos, almost the script from some of the videos is in this book. So it's a really great, kind of partner to the videos, and for a very simple investment, literally you can do what I do, which is you can walk into technical situations, complex technical situations, you can make the complexity go away and you can make more money, because that is what Complexity Made Simple is about for my clients. I help them to make more money.